Hi, this is Bruce Lindsay, working with Liz Gallo on our continuing project to document the stories of veterans. Today we are with Army veteran Ross Morrison. Mr. Morrison served in the Army during World War II and was on his way to the Pacific Theater when the war ended. As you will see, however, he continued to serve in many different capacities throughout his life.
My complete name is Ross Ivan Morrison Sr.
Okay. And where you born?
I was born in a little village of Martinton, Illinois, Martinton, Martinton, Illinois. I was born March 15th, 1923. Yeah. Okay.
All right. And were you part of a big family, or?
We were four sons, and I was the third one. I graduated from high school in 1941, and then I went down to Illinois State Normal University for college. Did I finish there? No.
No, because of the military.
They promised you that you could.
What?
Because of the military, you didn't finish there.
Did I have to go to the military then?
Yes.
They promised you would be able to graduate before you went to the
Yeah.
Army.
They promised me I'd be able to graduate, but then they called me into military service, and yeah, so I didn't graduate that way.
Okay, so do you know what year you got called up?
You were called up in 1943
Was I? To
to
what?
camp,
To
to go to boot camp.
Okay,
Okay.
so you got called up, and then you went to boot camp.
You went for basic training. You went to Camp Joseph Robinson.
Joseph
Camp Robinson.
Captain Robinson.
Arkansas.
That was just outside of Little Rock.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell them how you became a clerk. Why did you become a clerk? What happened?
A cook.
Clerk.
Clerk.
A clerk.
Company clerk. How did that happen? Rather than being
Oh.
going overseas.
Because there was very few men that knew the touch system of the typewriter, so that made it. That was great for me. That I got that job of typing, and I was typing for the captain. Anyway, yeah.
And so where were you stationed after boot camp?
Okay, remember they sent you for training at the University of Kansas,
Yes.
and that's where you met Vanetta
They sent me to the University of Kansas
to get some more
to
training.
get some more training. Okay.
And you met Vanetta.
I met Vanetta.
But before you married her, you again were you were sent down to Fort Bliss. Fort Bliss.
Outside of El Paso.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Geography
Yeah.
knows. All right.
Yeah.
And you got an Army chaplain to marry you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Can you share what happened in August when you had to go overseas? I think you might have a little clearer understanding. Do you remember where you went to get on the ship?
Portland, I think. Oregon,
Portland, Oregon.
which is just right along the river there.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you get on the ship, and what happens?
Huh. Oh, I just sat out all the time and enjoyed the ride sitting out for 10 days. Yeah.
You get no assignments.
Yep. Got to Honolulu.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while on the ship, you hear news.
Sorry.
Well, you're on the ship and you hear news about the war. What did you hear? What news event did you hear?
Well, was that dropped on Japan?
Yes,
That's when you
hearsay.
heard the news.
Yeah. And that was a very bad one.
Right.
And they didn't surrender then.
Right.
So we had to drop another one.
Right.
Then they got the message.
Nagasaki.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened when you got to Hawaii? Did you have anything to do? Any
What?
assignments?
When I got,
in Hawaii? Did you have any assignments from the Army?
I must have belonged to some company or something
You
there.
did,
Yeah.
but there was nothing to do, right?
I don't know.
So you would just check in the morning and then You told me you go to the beach.
Yeah, I think that was a
Eat.
pretty nice time that was a good time for a while there. Yeah.
Right. So your wife is getting worse, and you talk to the Red Cross. And what did you ask for the Red Cross to do for you?
If they would get me discharged or something.
Right. So they sent you back to Kansas, to Leavenworth,
Okay. Yeah.
and
To actually Lawrence, Kansas, but anyway. Yeah.
Fort Leavenworth, which is near Florence. Yeah. And so you were discharged from Hawaii, but you were discharged from the military in February of 1946.
We also talked earlier about, I don't know if we got this on the camera or not, where were you and how did you hear about Pearl Harbor? You seem to have some memories of that and how you felt that wasn't possible. You want to tell us that again? Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're at Illinois State.
I was in Illinois State. I was out walking on Sunday afternoon with just a lady friend. I don't know how much of a lady friend, but a woman. I was out walking on that Sunday afternoon, and she told me about that. Yeah.
And so what was your response to her?
That wasn't possible.
Yeah.
That was my response.
And why did you think it wasn't possible?
I think because of the power of
The Navy.
and where were that would have been the Hawaiian Islands and
Right.
Yeah.
the power that was there, the Hawaiian Islands. Yeah.
You thought we were too
Military
powerful.
power that
Yeah.
was there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Where were you stationed during the war before you got sent to Hawaii,
Now see, Fort Bliss. No,
Texas?
was that?
And you're a
That was in El Paso, Texas.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's where you got married.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember that wedding? Who else was there besides the chaplain? Maybe you wasn't remember that. You just said there was only one other couple.
Yeah. Well, it was just a friend of mine and his wife. Okay.
Right. Now, you remember that? Yeah.
They were the witnesses. Yeah.
Which often happened during World War II. The weddings were big.
Yeah.
They were quick.
Because he had a car, so that's how I had. He furnished transportation for me that way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So you got to come back to Kansas because your wife was very sick, correct?
Yes.
I think so.
And then she passed away in
48. So actually, she did live 2 more years.
Okay.
She was not very well.
Yeah.
okay.
Uh-huh.
And what did you do after the war? What was your occupation after the war?
Taught public school. Yeah.
In Eldora, Kansas, which is Florence, but
What?
Eudora.
Eudora,
Yeah, it's right near Lawrence.
right near Lawrence. Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to tell this. You used to tell all your stories about being a coach.
Yeah, I had undefeated teams. Yeah. And in basketball and in softball.
Yep.
The whole year I had my teams were undefeated that year.
It's a great
What's
story.
happening to your little boy? You had your little boy with you. Who cared for Ivan while after she
Well,
passed?
wasn't that Aunt Mary? But he was only about 2, and she couldn't control him.
She took care of him for a year, and then
Something
after,
like that. So then I got on the train and took him to my parents in Illinois. So then they started taking care of him at that time. Yeah.
And then when you went down to Georgia, who'd you meet in Georgia?
Did I meet in Georgia? That one over there?
You better remember. Yes, after he graduated, there was this little Bible school where he met me, and then after graduation, he started teaching school.
No.
Do you remember you went to Trumansburg, New York, upstate New York?
Trumansburg, New York is outside of Ithaca.
You're right.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
remembers geography. Good teacher. But what happened? You walked in and you got a job. What kind of job you had?
Something, she had something to do with it.
Well,
Yeah. I said, oh, I told him I was married to June Ditzel.
Yeah.
Oh, he said, if you're married to June Ditzel, he says, I don't need any more. I don't need any more recommendation. Yeah.
so the family had a great reputation in that town.
That's great.
And we can't go through everything, but you came to Lancaster and you started teaching in the public school. I know there's some other schools in between, but you taught here in the Lancaster City School District. Remember playing kickball with the students?
I do that. Oh yes. The little second grade boy wanted to be sure it wouldn't be final. He actually would assign to my room.
Right.
So he looks up, the little second grade boy looks up at me. I hope I get in your room next year. And I said, why? Because you play kickball.
So it's a neighborhood school. So there was no principal. But you became the head teacher, what they call the head teacher.
What subjects did you teach?
What did you teach there?
Well, didn't I teach just a grade or
It's
something
grade school.
Okay, so you taught every subject.
in that grade?
Mhm.
One grade, yeah.
Yep.
So when the school districts, well, actually it was the state, wanted the students to have local history and Lancaster history.
Yeah.
And most of the teachers didn't know what to do. What did you do about Lancaster history?
I wrote a book.
That's right.
But what was the name of my book?
It happened in Lancaster County.
It happened in Lancaster County. Oh, yeah, I do now remember that. Yeah.
And the 16 school districts here in Lancaster adopted that as their textbook.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I sold a lot of books that way.
Through the years, around 25,000 maybe.
Wow,
They probably don't use it now.
Oh no, it's
it's history.
he retired in '85, so it's like
Did I read that he was a pastor also?
yes,
Many years. We went overseas.
yeah.
Did I read Casey at the Bat someplace?
Oh, you used to do a lot. A library. You'd read a lot of poems, but that was always your final. That was your.
Okay.
There's no joy where.
Do you want to give him some background on the pastor and the missionary she mentioned?
Okay.
Get that on.
When he was up in upstate New York after he started teaching, he helped out 2 small rural churches. One in Rural Grove, which is near Colasco, New York, and the other one is West Lenox, which is not too far from north of Scranton. Then you heard about this need down in Kentucky, and they had an orphanage, and they had a school, and this is the 50s, so the Supreme Court decision hadn't come down, so he taught a public school in a Christian school. Yeah, he was paid by the Perry County.
Yeah.
It was a different world back then.
Mm-hmm.
So you were a public school teacher in a private school.
Something like that.
Yeah, and then from there you went to the orphanage, and I remember these Wisconsin. You taught in a Christian school there. Now, that was a Christian school. Then you came to Lancaster for 1 year and taught here. That's what got us here.
Yeah.
And then you got into the public school. When he retired, you made 3 different trips to Africa. How did you end up in Illinois State? Because nobody in your family had ever gone beyond high school. So what did the coach do after the county mile?
Sorry.
You remember the county mile?
The
In high school?
I won it.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I won it. And was it raining when we ran? I ran
Could
it.
be.
Yeah, and then so we quit the track meet then because it was raining. But I did get I won the mile before we quit.
Mhm.
Yeah. Then I came back the next day and won the half mile, and then you yelled at me, "Step on it! You have a record." But I knew that I was so far ahead on the other side that I started slowing down because I didn't think anything about records. And so if I hadn't slowed down, I would have probably had a record, which might still be today. But anyway,
So the coach called down to somebody in Illinois State and said, "We got a guy here. We might want to attract him." And I think it was like $32 a semester. So it was Grandpa, his dad, worked on. He was a day laborer. What do you call it? He worked on the railroad, but they're out working on tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they were not making. It was depression. They weren't making a lot of money. After the war, you ran for University of Kansas. You ran for their cross country team.
yeah,
And you ran the nationals one year. I'm not going to tell you how badly you did, but you ran the nationals.
Getting there is a big deal.
Yeah, University of Kansas.
yeah,
And if you looked at that thing, because of moving through and because the Army going through, he was getting a lot of hours but not getting degrees.
Yeah.
And so then later on, and I remember as a child, and he started tightening up those things. So, and also because of so many things, he ended up with 2 different bachelors. I don't remember the whole history behind that. But then Millersville was very convenient because he could just go over here and got his master's.
I got a master's in history.
Yeah, they didn't care what you got it in.
I got that from Millersville.
Right.
Yeah, and I didn't go beyond the master's then.
The recruiter came to the campus. The Army recruiter came to the campus. And you knew you might be drafted. And he said, well, instead of being drafted, if you sign up and you even had the certificate, you don't have to go in until 1945 when you graduate. Do you remember that? Anything about that? Can you tell me?
Yeah, but they broke that. They broke that too. Yeah.
Who broke the promise?
Oh, the government or somebody.
The Army.
Yeah.
Tell me about the relationship with your captain. What would happen when the lists would come in for the soldiers that were going to be sent overseas? Do you remember what he would do?
The captain
Mm-hmm.
would draw a line through my name, which kept me from being sent out that way.
Why?
Huh?
Why did he do that?
I must have been some kind of a servant to a typist for him.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to lose me.
So he probably would have done Germany, or at least France and Germany.
So I never went over. I never went to France or Germany then.
Do you remember the first time you went to Kansas, University of Kansas, and they asked you to take some really hard courses in math? Do you remember that?
It's Kansas.
University of Kansas.
And I do. I'm not good in math at all, so I couldn't. I guess I failed those courses.
Yeah.
Anyway, which I have only got all my transcripts where, the list of all the courses you've taken and your grades. There is one F. And I can't remember exactly what course that was in, but I made it F. But anyhow.
Well, we were in Botswana, and then we have a son that also is a missionary in
Kenya.
And we worked with him for a couple of years. He taught, and
He taught. He taught at a college, and that's where he taught then. Yeah. And that was good for him.
It was a little Bible school in Botswana.
Yeah, the one in Kenya was a little larger. That's a larger country. Yeah. When you listen to the Cubs games growing up, What would the announcers say every day when they would come on?
It's a beautiful day in Chicago.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
he'd always say that.
I
Yeah.
always say that. Um,
Of course, he said that every day. That's a beautiful day in Chicago. Yeah.
it was rainy or windy, which is often what's the case. Your brothers, at least one, was in the military. Did anybody else besides Myron? Myron went to the war. Anyone else? Did any of did Harry or George, were they in the war?
I don't know, honey.
I don't think so. Then,
Oh, I
oh,
know the story.
Huh?
You went up someplace, I don't know if it was Victoria Falls, whatever, in the airplane, and the plane got bogged down in the mud, and you had to take a 4-wheel drive back and then take a train to get out of there.
That's not my story.
Where it is. It's in the book.
Tell me again.
You were going someplace. It was either Victoria Falls or somewhere north, and it happened to be one time. It's desert, and it happened to rain, and so you landed the plane, and then the pilot said it was so muddy that he could only take off by himself,
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean.
and then you had to take a 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Got on the train, went down, and someone had to meet you down at the train station to take you back. Now, Dad, do you remember any of that?
I think I do.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You're flying into some remote place, way out in the desert.
we were flying.
Yeah, in a small plane,
Yeah.
and then you landed, but it was kind of iffy. It was kind of muddy.
Hmm.
But then to return.
Return, you had to get
But he couldn't take off then with us with him.
Yes.
too much weight.
So he took off.
And
I don't know what we did then.
you got like a Land Rover or
Yeah.
something. So it took you a lot longer to get back.
Yeah.
But those experiences were wonderful. I'm so glad after retirement we were able to do that. We still correspond with some of the people yet.
That's great.
Do you remember?
He had a
Remember-
question, then.
Good.
I'm sorry.
Good.
Do you remember your interpreter down there, the lady that was so good interpreting? Because all your classes you didn't speak Setswana, so I get that right? At the language Setswana?
There was a lady, and she could read English,
Mm-hmm.
so she could read by manuscripts,
Mm-hmm.
and then she could translate that way. Yeah.
Some of them understood English, but it wasn't their first language.
Do you have anything that you would consider like advice to young people?
In days of old, when knights were bold, and barons held their sway, in fear of their lives, men obeyed their wives, the same as men do today.
That's some wisdom there.
Yeah.
That's how you stay married for 72 years.
Pardon?
That's how you stay married for 72 years.
Pay your wives.
You can say any of your poems if you remember them.
Do you remember anything of Casey at the back?
Well, somewhere in this favored land, the sun is shining bright, and somewhere children shout. But there is no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck out.
That's at the end.
You played, besides high school baseball, you played on the town team, right? And you were a center fielder.
Yeah.
So what did the coach tell when the ball was hit up in the air? What he would say?
Oh, let me catch it.
But how would he say that?
Because he just called Morrison, huh?
That's right.
Yeah, yeah,
He was fast back in those days.
yeah. He didn't want the left fielder or the right fielder. He wanted me to try to catch it because he had more confidence in my catching it than he did those two. Yeah.
So you must have been good enough that when they would form their teams at the different camps that you played, they had you playing.
Yeah.
You weren't Joe DiMaggio, but you must have been good enough to play.
Yes.
Do you remember what rank you were in the Army?
I was a technician, 4th grade.
That was his final.
Yeah. And then I had the title sergeant.
Right.
But I didn't get up to the top, what they call the top 3 grades. I never made that.
Did you ever have to do KP, kitchen
Police.
patrol? I think it was.
If I was a bad boy, I did kitchen police on Sunday afternoon. So
And by bad boy, you mean just not obeying what they asked you to do, huh?
well, something that wasn't, I misbehaved somehow or other.
Yeah.
And if I did, you knew what you were going to do on Sunday afternoon.
That was, so your captain didn't get you out of that.
Evidently not.
Yeah.
So
Did you ever leave your camp in Kansas without telling your superiors?
yes.
Why did you do that
Huh? Because I wanted to go home.
to your wife?
Yeah. Oh, there would be, somehow we would meet, and then we were discharged for the rest of the day or evening. So then when we were discharged, instead of just going to my regular quarters or something, I went home. I got up in time to get back, so they didn't know that I'd been away.
But you could do that because it was at a university. You could have done that at Camp Hood, I don't think.
I don't know.
Or Fort Bliss, I don't think you could either. But so you're blessed in that way to be stationed in Kansas most of the time, off and on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of became home for you.
Mm-hmm.
Who instructed you in basketball?
Who instructed me in basketball? Oh boy, Fog Allen. Yeah.
And today it's called Fog Allen Fieldhouse.
Yeah.
Hall of Famer coach.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah. So your undefeated season, you learn well from your coach.
Sorry?
Your undefeated season of basketball, you learn well from your coach.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. We didn't lose any baseball games. We didn't lose any basketball games that year.
You've lived a very interesting and
It's been a good life.
yeah. And your poem is what got you through, right?
Yeah, the poetry.
Poetry.
Yes.
The days of
What is it?
In days of old.
In days of old, when knights were bold and barons held their sway, in fear of their lives men obeyed their wives, the same as men do today.
there you go.
Yeah.